This presentation was commissioned for the Mothers of Preschoolers, or MOPS group, at Lakewood Baptist Church, Auburn, Indiana, April of 2015. Their theme for the year was A Beautiful Mess. Here was their description of the theme. A beautiful mess is basically about embracing our stories, even the hard parts, and how they form who we are and have led us to where we are now. Life as a mom is sometimes messy and hard, but the journey is worth it and is beautiful, and we should embrace it. Our stories are really our language, our thoughts, our internal programs. I love talking about our stories, but more importantly, I love talking about how to change our stories. I believe we can all benefit not only from knowing where our stories came from and how they have led us to where we are now, but how to change our stories to get us where we want to go in the end. So just how the heck do we do that? That's what I aim to demonstrate. This presentation was created for mothers of preschoolers, many of whom are full-time moms and have full-time jobs. It's a big commitment. From dealing with mothers, I've learned a few things about what mothers struggle with and would maybe like to be able to do better. To better handle stress or depression, to stay calm when dealing with kids, to feel more energized, more excited, more happy, to eat better, to keep the house clean and tidy, to improve relationships, to become more passionate. What would you like to be different for you? The term beautiful mess is an oxymoron, a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. The word oxymoron itself is an oxymoron. It's derived from the Greek words oxy, meaning sharp, and moron, meaning dull. Some common oxymorons that we use quite a bit are things like jumbo shrimp, paid volunteer, or deafening silence. Oxymorons give voice to life's inherent inconsistencies. The words beautiful and mess are also what we call mutually exclusive ideas, meaning one or the other, but not both. We generally cannot believe that something is messy and beautiful at the same time. Now think about the term mess. My house is a mess. I am a mess, or I'm a hot mess. These are the most common ways that I hear the term used. It's almost always negative. It usually means I'm really stressed and or depressed or messed up or lazy. A perception like this can easily spiral into a negative vortex. My house is messy, therefore I must be lazy. I'm a failure at being a mother. That makes me a failure at life. Everyone else is succeeding easily, but me. I don't deserve to be a mother. Everyone knows that. Any day now, Child Protective Services is going to come and take my kids away. Sound familiar? Well, implied in the title, Beautiful Mess, is the idea that maybe a mess can mean something other than what we normally think of when things appear messy. That just maybe we could learn to see a mess as something beautiful. What I'm going to be talking about in this presentation is just that, gaining a new perspective on a messy environment or a messy emotional life. I'm working from the premise that a messy house really can be viewed as something beautiful. That a messy house really can mean I'm an active mother, focused on the right things, and doing a great job. But in order to do that, we have to learn how to change a perspective. But first, let's start with a little exercise, just to get the neurons warmed up and firing. On the slides that follow are 10 sets of pictures. The first picture of the set is a close-up shot. The second picture is zoomed out to normal range. These are all common items that you will easily recognize once you view the normal shot. This exercise is meant to have a little fun, of course, but also to illustrate in a very graphic way what this presentation is all about. Keep track of how many you get right. So, how many did you get right? If you're like most people, maybe just a couple, right? Both pictures in each set were of the same item. So what was it about the second shot that made that picture more easily recognizable? And how do you suppose this exercise illustrates what you think I'll be talking about? Well, the second shot, of course, contained more information than the first shot, but it was also viewed from a different perspective. Our brains have become accustomed to seeing things from a usual perspective, and we call this our default perspective. When we change this perspective, however, these things can become almost impossible to recognize. But with practice, the new perspective becomes a bit more familiar. So, let's practice. So how'd you score the second time through? If you're like most people, you did much better. In my groups, the first time around, we maybe get 2 or 3 right. But then on the second time around, we score 100% every time. So how does this happen? Well, what we've just experienced is known as neuroplasticity, building new pathways in the brain. We literally built a new neural pathway between the first picture and the second picture, using the very powerful visual cortex in our brains. Now, if I were to show you these slides again next week, as I do when I'm running my seminars, you would most likely get most of them right. Our brains are that powerful, for good or for evil, or for seeing things as beautiful or seeing them as messy. The trick is to harness this power of the human brain to change the way that we think. When we learn how to do this, we can literally change just about anything. But let's start first with changing the perspective from seeing a mess as something ugly to seeing a mess as something beautiful. Now, I'm pretty sure that mothers of preschoolers don't automatically see a mess as something beautiful. A messy environment has the tendency to bring up negative thoughts and emotions about a mother's efforts, a mother's abilities, worth, and so on. Here are some actual thoughts that I've heard straight from the mouths of young mothers who are struggling. I'm lazy. I'm not doing something correctly. Other mothers are doing this so much better. I'm just not a good mom. I'm sure that most of us would logically agree that a messy house really doesn't mean any of these things. So how is it that we can know this, but yet still feel like such a failure when the house is a mess? That's what this presentation is all about. Explaining how this happens, and more importantly, how to feel beautiful even when the house is a mess. But first we need to know how our brains really